This evening on Money Matters, we discuss the Malaysian rail industry and new challenges brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. How can the industry propel the nation to the next stage of development? Let's unearth the potential of the rail industry right now. Welcome to Money Matters with me, Tamina Kausji. Today, we will be speaking to the Malaysian Industry Government Group for High Technology, MITE. MITE's key role is to build and drive partnerships in technology done through a consensual building platform between the private and public sectors. This provides strategic advice and alliances to shape high technology studies for the country. Joining us in the studio is Chief Executive Officer of MITE, Datuk Dr. Mohd Yusoff Sulaiman. Welcome to Money Matters, Datuk. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful to have you in the hot seat, Datuk. Now, Datuk, let's get started off by talking a little bit more about connectivity that is provided by the rail transport industry. It definitely impacts our social as well as economic lives.
Right.
Now, earlier this week, just on Wednesday, our Transport Minister said that Malaysia will be relying very heavily on rail network to drive the nation's aspirations for the near future. Right. Towards this end, tell me a little bit more about the initiatives that are in place currently to expand the nation's rail network.
Right. I think on your first point, the minister is really spot on. Because when you talk about rail transportation, having an efficient and reliable rail transportation will support the socio-economic development of a nation. The evidence is already there. From the time when we started our rail transportation, when we had our first rail track from Port Weld to Taiping to support the tin mining industry, we are already, having that kind of socio-economic impact. And I think the moving ahead is really looking at the rail transportation itself, because somehow it has becoming more attractive to people to use it as their transportation mode. We call it modal choice or mobility option, the preferred one. We can see it in cities where people are now leaving their cars to travel on MRT and LRT and monorail.
Exactly.
Simply because of the technology development of the rail transportation. Yes, make it so efficient, so comfortable, and so, I think, cool for the young people especially.
Exactly. I think we're particularly looking at the younger sector actually taking this up very enthusiastically. From there, Datuk,
yes.
Let's talk a little bit about the fact that the Smart City Initiative for Malaysia will also be coming just in time. Malaysia's urbanized population will be reaching about 80% by just
Correct.
2030. Tell us about initiatives in this zone.
Well, what you have pointed out is actually a big challenge for the city planners especially.
Absolutely.
In the 11th Malaysia Plan, we talk about 4 cities in Malaysia touted as what we call sustainable cities to compete with other cities around the world. So it's named Kuala Lumpur, Penang, Kota Kinabalu and Kuching. So when you talk about smart cities or sustainable cities, the visualization is having a very modern rail transportation system as the basic,
the nucleus.
Yeah, for moving people. And when you talk about rapid urbanization, you really need a very massive form of transportation that would actually not result in congestion or, safety and aspect is very important, and etc. But moving to your point about this urbanization is also the fact that Malaysia is becoming a super age society by 2056. I mean, that means we have 20% of the people in urban areas are actually aged 65 and above.
Exactly.
So how do you cater for this kind of group in terms of their mobility? They do want to travel, and do their own thing. But can the rail transportation provide a very ease of use and comfortable, ride for them?
Absolutely.
So that's another challenge.
A lot of food for thought. Now, looking towards actually expanding the close to 2,000 kilometers of rail network that we have, Datuk, let's talk about the new challenges brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic before we move into the commercial.
Right. So the COVID-19 is affecting every industry. And I think the key drivers that's going to see it coming out of this pandemic will be 3 things. One is on health. how good are we at containing the pandemic? And I think we are looking at the vaccine as you know, the
silver bullet, so to
the silver
speak.
bullet for the situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then when we look at from the perspective of economy, how fast is the economy gonna recover, and therefore give people the money and you know, disposable income for them to actually do their travelling, whether for work or for leisure.
Absolutely.
And then the third point is about the societal behaviour. For 1 year now, we have been staying at home, and we feel there's some kind of fear about trying to travel in a very confined space. How would people overcome that kind of psychological
barriers?
effect,
That's right,
you know?
exactly. Because we cannot just assume that people will be very gung-ho to travel.
Right.
They may not be.
That's right. So I think there's a lot of preparation, a lot of changes that we need to do in terms of preparing for this demand coming back online. So sanitation at the terminal.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, temperature check. And then how do you segregate passengers so that they will not be, you know, bunched closely together.
Very true.
And all these things. But this also offer opportunities for people who are entrepreneurial to create business out of this. So again, I think from every adversity, there is sometimes a silver lining that we could actually look at to improve our business, you know, opportunities.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Datuk. Let's take a short break now. Find us on Twitter. Share your thoughts on the discussion so far. Coming up, we will be looking into the potential of the rail industry and also job opportunities.
Kami tahu nak mengembangkan perniagaan.
Welcome back to Money Matters. If you're just joining us, we're speaking to the CEO of Malaysian Industry Government Group for High Technology, MITE. Datuk, now moving on from there into, of course, what is definitely the hot topic and has been for the past couple of months with regards to the rail sector, the termination of the high-speed railway, the HSR project, though, is seen as being in the best interest of the nations currently, with especially the COVID-19 pandemic upon the country. A few comments from your side based upon what the immediate projections are.
Well, I think it gives us a pause, and I think considering the COVID-19 pandemic, I think that's a good decision to make, and then for us to really look how that we can plan it for the future. From the industry point of view, when there were multiple projects happening in Malaysia, I think the industry will also feeling the pinch in a way that the optimal way to operate on so many projects is actually not really very good. So if you space it out, the industry can actually do much better in terms of providing their products and services. So I think, but what we would like to do now is that since we had the time to review HSR, the industry would like to say that can we come in early to provide our inputs?
Absolutely.
So that we can think about localization of our products and services. We talk about how we can, maximize the benefits to the community through the TOD, for example, the transit-oriented development. We talk about the kind of localized products from natural resources, for example, rubber products and etc., that we can make use. So these are, I think, the wish of the industry, so that the government would actually open up and engage them very, very early to get their input, so that, it's not only that we're going to get the system, but we're also going to drive the industry to a new heights.
Exactly, and particularly about integrating IR 4.0 early on enough that our local providers and tech companies are not left behind, right?
That's right.
Right. So from there, moving on, Datuk, to a couple of the new potentials in the rail industry. When we speak about the revival of the nation's rail projects to propel our nation to the next stage of development, which are the potential new areas of investment that are in the pipeline, if you can share with us?
Right. When we look at this transformation of the industry, we use this acronym called FIRST,
Sure.
F-I-R-S-T. So we look one at the funding and the financial opportunities. Yeah. Of course, we would like to encourage more OEMs or parts and component manufacturers to come here where there is a gap in our ecosystem. For example, in Kulim, there is a Chinese company that produces glass for the photovoltaic cells module, as well as for windows of trains. So these are things that if we can get it locally, it can really bring down the cost. And then we look at the infrastructure and institutions. So why MARIC is, to me, very important in the whole equation, the Malaysia Rail Industry Corporation, is because it successfully bring all the players together under one umbrella, therefore could actually provide the voice of the industry in a very neutral and very equal, if you compare to one or just using a consultant.
Absolutely,
So
very much more cohesive.
That's right.
From there, Datuk, if I may, let's move along to the ECRL project. So, of course, the cost has been trimmed down now under the current government to 44 billion ringgit, 34% lower than the previous 65.5B tag.
Right.
We're also looking very encouragingly at job opportunities for up to 23,000 Malaysians with a 70% local workforce. Tell me more about this.
Well, it's... as you know, the negotiation between the two governments actually allow Malaysia to localize 40% of the infrastructure, what we call the civil and infra works on the ECRL project. So that actually create the jobs in the states that the train actually passed through, the ECRL project passed through. So you have benefit to Kelantan, Terengganu, Pahang, and Selangor, and maybe Negeri Sembilan to that effect.
That's right.
So it sort of give us a meaningful outcome that we can actually equalize the economic growth of states through this kind of accessibility.
Sure.
And as well as you mentioned, the job opportunities. But the long term is that the states that have been neglected in terms of economic growth and now had the opportunity to be part of the whole growth corridor. But secondly, we need to also consider the system works. The communication, signaling, track works, rolling stock, and
exactly,
other
it's a full
abilities.
package.
So we are still now trying to convince the Chinese party that have a look at us. I mean, if you use local products and services, there's better chance that it can be maintained better. You can have a lower operating cost for that matter. And you actually help to revitalize the local industry. And
Absolutely.
that is something I think is somebody will be proud to do, isn't it?
Absolutely invaluable come 2026, of course. Thank you, Datuk.
Yeah.
Now let's take a short breather. Now in the meantime, do follow us on Twitter and let us know your thoughts on the discussion so far. We'll be right back. With me, Tamina Kauschi. Now, Datuk, let's move along very quickly into transformation plans for Malaysia's rail industry within the next 5 to 10 years.
Right. I think it's very important for us to have a total review of the railway industry. I think one is to look at the whole ecosystem. That means how do various players in the ecosystem work together.
Sure.
Whether you're from the regulatory bodies, whether you are from the private sector, whether you're from university, whether you're from NGOs, whether you are from the state. We have to find a good platform to actually have conversations and try to look at things from the national perspective. So I think that is very, very key. And then secondly, we look at the technology inputs. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to look at the new technologies that's coming, based on the fourth industrial revolution technologies. Artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and etc. will actually disrupt the whole industry in many ways.
Absolutely. So it's best to be ahead of the curve as well.
That's right.
Right. From there, Datuk, if I may,
yes.
looking at more in depth at further opportunities in Malaysia's rail industry, but particularly when it comes to actually establishing an integrated system for cargo to increase rail freight capacity to carry items like food and other goods, especially in light of shortened supply chains because of COVID-19.
Right. As you know, rail transportation does not provide door-to-door services. I mean,
Absolutely.
you're talking about it's going from city to city, or in some cases it doesn't even end up in a dense area. So you need to have the last mile connected to rail. So when you talk about combination of rail and road transport, for example, lorries and train, so there must be a system where the handling of cargo from one to another should be seamless, whether it's through the system, whether it's through the physical exchange of cargo, or in terms of managing the whole process. So there must be really a conscious approach towards integrating this transportation. And then, of course, I mean, we look at what are the model actually good at. A train is actually good for long distance, carrying bulk items.
Absolutely.
But considering the current delivery system of small packages, I wonder, can rail actually be combined with drones, for example?
Very
so
true.
that is going to give you a very futuristic last mile going to your house, things being carried by drones.
Now, speaking of innovation, though, Datuk, I must ask you about this. What are your thoughts on the rail industry actually assisting with Malaysia's impeding vaccine rollout all the way from the end of February? So we still have some time for planning and strategizing.
Right. It's a very important thought there, because rail can provide the mass transportation of these vaccines to all the corners of Malaysia. And secondly is that rail transportation have infrastructure like warehousing and etc. that could actually help in terms of keeping the vaccines before it's being used by the patient.
Absolutely.
So
especially for the interior regions that are hard to reach.
Right. So you already have a system that can monitor the goods. You have a system that actually can deliver the final mile. So you can actually use rail transportation for that, distributing that immunization plan and get the vaccines to people in a very efficient way. We have to really think hard about it, how we're going to look at the details. But I think rail can offer this kind of solutions to some of these issues.
Absolutely, and I really hope the right parties are listening to our conversation today. Datuk, just before we finish off the entire show, promoting railway connectivity within the ASEAN region, especially with China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, and the thoughts for the immediate future concerning Malaysia.
Well, I think it's already in place, isn't it? The East Coast railing is part of the BRI initiative. And it has actually provided a lot of job opportunities, and it has, as you mentioned just now, and it's also a way of working closely with China and towards the bigger picture of the Belt Road Initiative. But secondly, don't forget the Singapore-Kunming line, which actually will link the 7 ASEAN countries and China. And this is a way that we can actually talk about being the equalizer, bringing growth and development to those countries which are not the same within the ASEAN countries. So it's a concept that we call prosperity neighbor. And if your neighbor does well, you do well too.
Exactly.
So that's something that we look forward to.
Absolutely, and it's all about ASEAN coming together at this very opportune of times. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Datuk. Now, before we go though, you stand a chance to win a free, fully furnished house. Take a look.
Property Guru is giving back to Malaysians for making them the #1 property website in the country. They're providing a lifetime opportunity to one Malaysian to win a free home worth over 600,000 ringgit. All you have to do is nominate a Malaysian home seeker who deserves to win a fully furnished house at Tropicana Metro Park in Subang Jaya, Selangor. For more detail, visit Property Guru's website.
Thank you so much for tuning into Money Matters, and do tune into Twitter as well to tell us your thoughts on the show so far. We'll be back next week with more money insights that matter. Till then, I'm Tamina Kausji. Thanks for watching, and please remember to stay home and stay safe.